Hey everybody, what's up? In this match I play someone who's a very successful 9-man player, but I think he might be playing his first heads-up match. And the reason I chose this match is because there's an interesting pattern that I pick up on and take advantage of, and also a couple of interesting spots. So we start off the match with King 2. Haven't played this guy before, obviously. Limping as usual, and he raises me from the big blind, and King 2 is an easy fold. Even King 2 suited would be an easy fold for me at this stage. And we pick up Ace King. Unfortunately he folds. And now I limp my King 7, and he lets me limp, so I was a bit worried after he attacked my first limp that he was going to be annoying and attack all my limps and I'd have to switch my strategy. But he's let me limp, so hopefully that was just, the case of him having a decent hand or raising to see what had happened. And we hit top pair. He checks, and because my top pair is a high top pair, I'm going to check for deceptive value. And the Queen of Diamonds on the turn. That obviously completes some straight and flush draws and puts lots of other draws out there. So he bets 40, and I'm happy to flat call that. I'll just see what comes on the turn, the river, and that's a really safe looking card for me. And now he fires out pot. I don't think I'm going to get too excited here with my top pair. Obviously I'm not folding, but one pair, not a great kicker, I'm going to flat call. And he had King 4, so already it appears this guy is a bit tricky, checking his top pair out of position, and this guy might be one to look out for if he's going to make that sort of play. Not the standard sort of play that most opponents make. Alright, he raises on King 8, and suited, I'm going to call. Normally my sort of limit is King 9 suited, but I think I'll just peel one off here and see the flop, which isn't helping anyone. And he bets 20 into the 120 flop after having checked. That's a pretty interesting bet. I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of two things. Either it's a very, very weak nothing bet, or he's hit a monster. And considering he checked his top pair, wouldn't be surprised if he's hit a monster. So I'm out of there, and we'll move on to the next hand. Limping, allowing us to limp, so it looks like we're going to get away with limping, which makes things a bit easier for me. Now he checks, of course I'm going to stab, and he min raises me. And this is the first time this has happened. I've got no hand or no draw, so I'm obviously not going to call. And he is looking a bit tricky. He checked that first pair at the start, and then he check raised me there. So obviously not your average opponent, this guy, which is why I made the video. And here I stab out, he flat calls me, and 2 on the turn, which gives me a gut shot. Just betting to control the pot, getting called. And the 6, not a bad card. I mean, if I was behind on the flop, I'm still behind. And if I was ahead in the flop, I'm still ahead. And with that logic, I'm going to bet. And he folds. So that was a nice little pot. Alright, limp out 10-7. He checks. I stab. Flat calls me. And he hasn't checked raised me. I suspect he's probably on the 5 or the 4 or some little draw. And I don't think I'm really going to push him off it. So I'll give up. And then full pot on the river. So apparently, according to him, a 3 is part of his range there. Maybe something like 3-5, 3-4, who knows. And we'll let him have it. Alright, he min raises. Easy call on ace 3, I'd call on any 2 cards. And we flop top pair but with no kicker, so we're going to try and control the pot size here, not get too excited. I check, he bets full pot, which I call. Ace on the turn's a pretty good card. Once again checking. Plenty of times I've gone out of heads up sit and goes with 3 of a kind and a worse kicker, so not going to get too excited. And he bets full pot here, which I'm going to call. And the river is a queen. This helps if he had me out kicked with something like a 6 or a 7 or an 8. Now we're splitting, so I'm just going to check. And he was bluffing, so he fired 2 barrels there. And actually I make a note in his notes. When people talk about what sort of notes should you make from this particular player, what I would note would be that first of all he checked top pair out of position, second that he check raised me out of position, and third that he fired 2 barrels on air after min raising pre-flop. So they're the 3 notes I would take on this guy so far. That might help if you're trying to sort of, think about what to do when you're taking notes. Alright, limp my king 10, and we hit middle pair, and take that one. Alright, 10-6 offsuit, and we've got a gut shot, but sort of board where I'm not going to get many folds if I bet, and I don't have any hearts. So check it. He doesn't appear to want it. And now he bets 40. The problem with calling here, I've seen a lot of people do this, is that if the 9 or the ace comes, you're probably not getting any more value out of this hand. So, you've got no implied odds here. And I think it's a really easy fold. I think calling here is way too loose. So I fold that up. Alright, 5-10 suited. Limp, and he 3x's, and I'll fold that. So I'm being pretty tight so far, and just playing simple poker, which is working out alright. And I check out of position here. This sort of board is too wet for me to stab at. And he bets pot, and no hand, no draw, no call. That old gem works well. Alright, limping my ace 4 suited. And once again, not the best flop. I don't like these sort of middle flops for when I'm trying to stab at boards. And I try, get called, and we're done. And he actually had queen 10, so there's something else to think about. Didn't raise on his broadways, and didn't check raise me on middle pair. So he's a little bit unpredictable, which makes him, makes him an interesting opponent anyway. Alright, so here we've hit a monster, and I'm going to lead out with it. I've been leading out a lot of pots, so let's see if it does me any good. And he folds. So nice timing there. But I'm still happy with leading out there. I think it was the right thing to do. I mean, when I've led out that many times, I'm hoping that I'm more likely to get called because of the frequency that I'm leading out. Alright, once again, not the best flop to attack. I think I'm getting called by a 2, by a 5, by, any sorts of draws like 5, 6 or whatever. Now he bets pot on the turn. I know he's quite capable of having top pair or better, but I'm not going to fold my 9. In fact, what I do here is raise him. And the reason that I'm doing this is a pot control line. Not sure if I'm ahead, not sure if I'm behind, and if he re-raises me here, obviously I can fold, but what I really want him to do is check the river to me. So he flat calls this, river's a 2, he checks, which is exactly what I wanted him to do, and now I can check behind. And he actually had 2 pair, but instead of me facing some pot size river bet, I see the river for free. So that check raise on the turn to control the pot size and to control the action. And it also gives you a good indication, because if he had have attacked me by raising my check raise, I could have easily let go of the hand. So I think that was sort of 40 chips well spent. Alright, 9-7, miss, and he bets pot, all his, and we're just, being calm, waiting, the spot will come. Not doing anything fancy. Hit top pair, I bet, and he check raises me again. Obviously I'm not folding top pair here, and when he doesn't follow up with the bet on the turn, I'm now going to bet this, and he flats me, and the 8, I don't think that's a card that's going to particularly help him. If he had something like King 9 or something, obviously it's not so good because his kicker will play or whatever, but I think that his check raise and then just flat call looks pretty weak to me. So I'm going to bet again on the river just for value, and he folds. So there you go, his check raised me, obviously without that good a hand if you had to fold the river. Alright, and he folds, limping my King 7. He checks, and I do too. Often I'd fire out on these paired boards, but I'm playing this match pretty tight. And 30 here. I don't think there's much value in me raising him. I'm not going to fold out any worse hands. I could be in a lot of trouble. Just going to flat call, and now the river obviously doesn't help me much. And he bets just 30 into the 120 pot. And once again, I mean, I can't beat any kings because I don't have a kicker. Obviously I can't beat any sixes, and straights and flushes are on the board, so I'm just going to flat call that. And he actually turns out to have the full house and a pretty sneaky little play there, the sort of 30-30. Obviously if I hit a flush or something I would have raised that, and he could have doubled up there. So he's a sneaky thinking player, and really I lost the minimum on that, which sort of makes me happy. Alright, he limps, and 3 hearts on the board. Things are not looking so good. I check, he bets, and I'm not very interested in that hand. Sort of playing a little tight there. Alright, limp my Jack 9, he raises 3x, and 1 gapper, I'll play that. If I hit, I could hit a huge pot. Pretty nice flop hitting middle pair there. And he checks. I'm being pretty conservative in this match. He's a tricky player, and I'm just going to check behind. The 8 is an interesting card. Now he fires a big bet there, and really I'm not putting him on a 7. It doesn't seem so likely to me. And I still have the sort of straight draw there, and middle pair, or second pair, sorry. I'm going to call, and king on the river, he checks. I just don't think that I'm getting called by anything worse if I bet here. Check it down, and he had pocket queens. Really, really weird line. I mean, a really fishy line for him not to bet the flop. And, weird. I think obviously I wouldn't have folded the flop, and I probably wouldn't have folded if he bet the turn, so he missed out on some chips there. And we're back to basically the starting stacks, but never mind. I didn't feel I could fold that hand, and I sort of, didn't lose too much on it, so it's okay. Alright, he raises 3x, Jack 7 suited, fold, and I try a raise to see what's going to happen. And he folds, so that works pretty well. My first raise, I think, of this match. And obviously I need to raise now and again, just to sort of disguise my good hands a little bit, but I'm not going to overdo it. Save it for the higher blind levels. Once again, a monotone flop with King 3 2 of spades. A bunch of flops in this game that I can't really attack that comfortably. So I check, he bets, and that's all his. Limping my Jack 4 suited, and stabbing in position, pick that up, and King 9 suited, and I stab at this one, get check raised. Oh, sorry, not check raised, I get raised, and last time he raised me, he didn't have anything, so I'm not going to fold this time either. And king on the turn, I check, he checks behind, and now I'm betting for value in case he's got a queen, and to stop him from bluffing as well. I'd rather bet than call. and he folds. So clearly he's raising me on air in a lot of these spots. And paired board, bet and take it down, that works. He folds pre-flop, fears the 8-3, good man. Jack 4, and once again another paired board. I stab at it, and he does the little check raise routine again, but this time I'm going to let him get away with it. So as you can see, he's quite tricky, this guy. Sort of not betting his over pairs, check raising all the time, just generally giving me a hard time. And now he bets pot, and I do have a gut shot, but that's not good enough to call this. I call if I had like a flush or maybe king jack or jack 9 or something. I mean a flush draw, not a flush. Alright, ace queen, we limp, and we hit top pair with a good kicker, but the 9s of course worry me. He checks, I bet, and he does his little check raise routine again, but paired board, I'm not going to get too excited. And he checks the turn, I bet for value, and I get raised again. Uh-oh, that's a pretty bad sign. Sort of this double check raise, I'm almost certain he's got a 9 now. There's 360 chips there, getting pretty good odds for another 90. Just in case, I call it. He checks, and obviously I'm going to check behind here because I am worried that he's got a 9. And that's exactly what he's got. Don't think I can really fold my ace there, just a 90, but if he had have put a decent bet on the river, maybe sort of 270 plus, then I'd certainly be folding this. One thing you can look at from his, or notice from his play, is he is missing a lot of value. He could have got some more value here, and there's a few other hands where he's hit where I probably wouldn't have folded, like the queen, he missed some value there, and one other hand as well. So, it's the old saying of try and make the most with your good hands and lose the least with your bad hands, and he's not quite doing that. Down to 1250 chips, he limps, and we miss, and he takes the pot down with his pot size bet, which he's doing pretty much every time that I check. And we try a raise pre-flop to see what's going to happen, and betting half pot here, not losing too many chips. I am a little worried he's going to try a check raise on air here, but I have raised pre-flop, so an ace would be in my range, or a pocket pair. I might have sort of 9s, 10s, jacks, whatever, and he gives it up, so that works pretty well. And here we hit top pair, betting, got called, didn't get raised, so I expect I'm ahead, and that's a pretty good looking turn. Now I'm betting just 60 for value, controlling the pot size, and I get called, and now the jack on the river, and the 120 here is partly blocking and partly value, a sort of combination. So if he raises me, I'll fold, and if he's got anything like a worse 9 or an 8, obviously I want some value from him. And he flats it, and he turns out to have the 8 with no kicker, so that was a little bit stationary of him. Limping my 10-2, and he raises it, so we're not going anywhere there. And he limps. Once again, another paired board, and because he loves to check, or because he loves to raise me, as well as check raise me, I'm just not going to do anything here. And we miss, and we miss, and we can't even call 40, so never mind, let's move on. Alright, here he 3x's me, and we're deep enough to call on a low pocket pair. Not the best flop. Luckily he checks, and bingo, we bink on the turn, and he bets out half pot. Last time he did this sequence with an over pair, which he could have. He could also have sort of something good like ace jack or king jack. So I'm going to raise him straight away. If he's got an over pair, hopefully he'll shove. So I think this raise will give me a lot of value. And I raised into about 320, not too much, but enough to sort of get him to commit. If he does have something good, Ace Jack, he might ship it, but unfortunately he folds. So I don't know, maybe I wasted my set there on a pretty dry board, but I'm not sure. I feel that it's better to raise. I mean, in general, people will ship hands there like queens, kings, aces, ace jack, king jack, maybe even queen jack. And they'll call, a lot of hands where they've got sort of, 2 overcards as well a lot of the time. Alright, middle pair, bet, get flat called, betting the turn. So this is repeating the sequence I had when I hit top pair with a 9. And once again on the river, I'm betting as a blocking / value bet combination, and now that he raises, I suspect that I'm pretty much beat, so I'm going to fold it. And, if you think you're beat, fold. Simple as that. Don't be a station. Raise my ace queen suited and get a fold. So I had raised a few random hands, and now finally I had a hand and he folded. But then again, ace queen is not the nut, so I don't mind if he folds that. And he folds pre-flop. We're back to basically the starting situation again. Pretty hard to get much traction in this match, but on the other hand, I haven't had, great hands. Alright, king 3. He checks. I bet and take it down. And he's being a little bit passive pre-flop, which suits me. Once again, he stabs that full pot bet there. I'd like to catch something so I could take advantage of it. And I call on my pocket 2s. Unlikely I'm going to hit another set. And check. Here he bets full pot on the turn. Not really sure what he's got. But I think if I hit a 3 or a 2, I could be good. And if he's got something like ace king or ace queen, I could still be good, obviously. I'm going to call it. And then the 10 on the river, and he shoves. So I'm going to have to fold here. I guess calling the turn. I'm not sure. I mean, at the time I thought it was okay. Now looking at it, I still think it's okay. This is not the sort of flop he's going to hit very often for his pre-flop raise. And, I think calling the turn was okay. Just now I have to fold it. So that didn't work as well as I would have hoped. Alright, he min raises, which I'm going to call obviously, and I check. He bets full pot, and honestly, this is not the sort of flop I would think he would have hit too much. Going to raise him here. Looks a little spewy, but I do have some outs, and it's not his style to sort of bet full pot here. I honestly think it looks a little bluffy. And he pretty much instantly folded there, so that was a nice little pot. Alright, raising on my jack 7, and not a very nice flop. He checks, I take a stab for 120, get flat called, and now I'm thinking, ugh, not so good. And the turn to 6 of clubs, that's good news. Obviously I've got a flush draw now. He checks. I'm going to check behind, see if I can hit that flush draw. And the river is a jack, so I've got some equity in the hand, and he bets 300. And that's not very nice. Now I have to think about what he's got. And I honestly don't think he's going to bet a king this aggressively. I think he'd just check it down for the sort of the showdown value. Certainly don't think he's going to bet an 8 this aggressively. There's not many hands I think he would have called pre-flop and have had a draw. I mean, it's a pretty dry board. But the bet just stinks because because as I said, I just don't think he's going to bet a king or an 8 this aggressively in this spot. So I'm just going to have to look him up. And if he's got something like a6, which is one of the few hands that would make sense, then good for him. And I do look him up, and he had a gut shot. and called on that. So I'm glad I hit the jack and not the 7. And it was a bit of a tough call, but it just didn't feel right for the reasons that I stated. I just couldn't see him betting a king or 8 that aggressively. So that helped. And now we've got our 2-1 chip lead pretty much. And he folds the next hand. Alright, 3-7, obviously a monster. And take a stab, take it down. I think he's maybe slowed down a little bit after being caught on that bluff. Gone back into his shell. And this is another interesting hand. I bet, and he raises me, and he's been doing this all throughout the match. So I'm just going to flat it and check. He checks behind, and I think he was just raising me on air. So I'm going to make a bet here and try and take this down. Obviously my 9 high is not going far, but 120 looks like I'm trying to get some value, and he folds. So taking advantage of that sort of raising on air trick that he's doing. So that's the little pattern I was talking about at the start of the match, which I took advantage of. Alright, here we've got a draw. Not going to bet. I've sort of beaten him up on a couple of hands, so I'm just trying to play a small pot here and take it down on the turn. Alright, more limping. I check. He bets. Different bet size to normal, and he's betting 80, and I wouldn't be surprised if that actually meant that he'd hit, whereas the 81s were steals, but I'm not really sure, and can't really test that hypothesis at the moment because I don't have anything. So fold it, and in a minute I'm going to become a little bit more aggressive and start raising a few hands pre-flop. Not this one though, just check it down, and we split that one. Alright, 8-2, the blinds have gone up to 25-50. Not really. I suppose I could have a stab here, but I check and it's all his. Got a 2-1 lead. Don't want to do anything too silly at this stage. And now I'm getting a bit more aggressive, as I mentioned before. Raise and get a fold. And he's still limping. Stab and get a fold. So he's really tightened up here. And limp my pocket 2s. And stab, take it down. So he's getting conservative as his stack has gone down. Alright, he's tightening up here. Could have raised my king jack, probably should have. And now didn't bet the flop, and I'm going to let him have it. 9-3. Alright, I check, and so does he. And now I bet my 9 for value. He flats me, and the club on the river is not very nice. I check, and his 75 is just screaming value. You know, please call me so I can have an extra 75 chips. So I'm going to fold, of course. Alright, raising my king 9, getting more aggressive as I mentioned, and 2 aces on the flop with 2 clubs. If in doubt, c-bet, which is what I do for about 150, and we take that pot down, so that was handy. He's down around 800 chips, and he folds my 10-10, which kind of bites, but never mind. Alright, and then he attacks my limp, or he can have that. Ace king, he limps, he's down about 700, and I just shove it just in case he's feeling like doing anything stupid, and unfortunately he's not. And to return the favour, I limp this one, and he shoves. Alright, so that's cool. Alright, we've hit our middle pair here, bet, get min raised again, so obviously I'm not going to fold. And now on the turn, he shoves. So, alright, easy fold. We'll wait for our spot, which will come. Limp my 7s. And he checks. I check behind. Not really sure why. I probably should bet. But it worked out pretty well. I bet now full pot for value. Trying to charge him if he's got anything like a draw, like a 5 or something like that. Get called, checked behind, and he hit on the turn, and luckily my checking there on the flop sort of got me an extra 100 chips. Alright, so he's limping still, and I stab, pick it up. Things are going pretty nicely. And here he bets 100. These cards are all in his range because he's not raising pre-flop, so I'll let him have it. And now we get to the last hand of the match. Top 2 pair, huge hand, and against a tricky guy like this, I'm going to have to try something a little bit tricky to get his stack. So I stab, hoping he's going to raise me, but he flat calls me. Now the Queen of Clubs on the turn, that's putting a lot more draws out there. So I check, he bets 100, and I think it's time to get aggressive here. There's 300 chips there. He's got 620 behind. There's lots of draws on this board. So I just shove it in and put him under the hammer here. And he calls on 10-5. So no pair. He's got a gut shot and a flush draw. So all I need is a non-club river. And it's a 2 of diamonds, which is a very pretty card. And that's the end of the match. So I hope you've enjoyed this one and picked up how we can sort of exploit the different patterns that these players have. His pattern was raising my stabs, often on air. And what you need to do is look at the frequencies. How often is he doing that sort of thing? If he's doing it once or twice, he's probably got a hand. But if he's doing it over and over again, then you need to come up with a counter strategy. And my counter strategy was to call a lot of those raises and then push him off later in the hand. So until the next video, I hope you all run good.